You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma podcast. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode. Excited to share this episode with you today. But before we do, I've got to thank our sponsors. First of all, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. They've been a huge part of this podcast for the last few years. So the Oklahoma Hall of Fame have been sharing Oklahoma's story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com. And for daily updates, go to oklahomahof on Instagram and give them a follow. Our other sponsor today is Chickasaw Nation. Now, the Chickasaw Nation have sponsored pretty much everything in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and it's an honor to have their name and their brand supporting this podcast. So a huge shout out to Governor Anatoby for supporting this podcast. It really means a lot. Our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln. And let's get into today's episode. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode down at the Bedford studio with return guests, Mark and Sam from TapTapEat, to talk about your, athletic abilities. I know we touched on it in the last podcast, which I'll link in the description for people listening, but there is a lot more to you guys than just creating the best food app going. But to set some context for people listening, if they haven't listened to that podcast already, I guess reintroduce yourselves and then tell us a little bit about what TapTapEat is.
Yeah, I'll start. I'm Mark Thompson, and I'm a co-owner of TapTapEat. And Sam, I'll let him introduce himself. But we're local here from Oklahoma. I was born and raised here. Graduated Edmond Memorial High School, and then went off to the University of Arkansas. Stayed there for a few years, and then crossed state lines back again in 2005, and have been back in Edmond ever since.
Sam Deck, also a co-owner, co-founder of TapTapEat. Moved to Oklahoma in 1997, to go to Southern Nazarene University, and been here in Oklahoma pretty much since. A lot of family roots from Oklahoma. Did a lot of travel from California and Texas, but ended up in Oklahoma and have been here for quite some time now.
Yeah. So people need to order their food through TapTapEat. That's basically what we're saying. And it helps your restaurant out, I promise. And if your restaurant that you love to order food from doesn't have it, you should tell them. And I'll leave the website link in the description, so you can go to that right now. But talking about the running stuff, me being a golfer, am not a runner. However, I have done a half marathon and an ultra marathon, which I watched.
Ultra?
Yeah, I did a 50 kilometer, and I did the Mid-South 50K a couple of years ago. After watching too many David Goggins videos, I was like, I can do this. I'm going to sign up for it right now. And I regretted it instantly. But I completed it somehow. But this, and I played soccer and rugby growing up, so we'd always run in as a kid and whatever, and I was kind of fast as a kid because I was the first one to kind of have the growth spurts on my legs were longer than everybody until everyone caught up, and then I was not fast anymore. I do remember the kid who beat me when I was in middle school, that he finally found his pace. I'm like, where did that come from? I was just so okay, I'm never running again. But running is, I think, when I started training, you get into a routine, your body's used to it, and then once you stop for a week or 2 weeks, it really kicks you in the rear when you get back into it. But for you guys, when especially kind of the mile stuff or the shorter distance stuff, I mean, maintaining pace for a mile is not easy. They say that the 800 or the 400 and the 800 is hard to train for, but training for a mile, I'm sure, is, again, another level. Where does running, I guess, Mark, start with you. Where does running begin for you?
Yeah, I grew up playing sports just like you, Mike. Anything and everything with a ball. That was my first word, and so I was always playing sports. And seventh grade in Oklahoma, I think it's probably still this way, is when school sports started. And I was playing soccer at the time, and basketball and baseball. And I thought, cross country is in first sport in the fall. It's like, man, I'm going to run anything I can do to get better at these other sports that I'm playing. I'm just going to get better at them. And so I saw it as something, as a stepping stone to like get better at the other sports. And I went to practice that first day and was like, the fourth runner in out of all the 7th and 8th graders, and found out, man, I can at least make myself suffer bad enough and endure it to be halfway decent at this. And I wouldn't say I loved it still at the time, but found a natural, had a little bit of a natural gift there.
Yeah. Sam, what about you?
It's kind of a similar story of I loved playing sports and athletics. Grew up, soccer was my love. And I mean, to be honest, it still is. I love playing soccer. And baseball and basketball. But what I found out somewhere, post, junior high was if I ran, I seemed to be a little bit faster than everybody else out on the soccer field, or everybody else, going around the bases. And so that was kind of, part of my base. I remember even having some teachers and coaches come and ask, like, hey, you need to run cross country for us. Hey, you need to come run track field and field for us. But it always got in the way of, soccer season or tennis season or, whatever the sports season was.
Yeah. So, Mark, for you then, when you realize that, like, hang on, I can suffer longer than others and I'm kind of pretty good at this, you started doing it more and competing at middle school, high school. And then, like, I mean, in high school, then it's like, whoa, I mean, I'm still doing this. I'm good at it. College, you start calling and thinking there's an opportunity for me to get my school paid for by running track. Yeah,
that's right. That's where things really started to change for me. So I remember as a junior in high school, I was still trying to play the other sports as well. So I would get, as a sophomore, I went and I won a state cross country title, which I was very proud of, on Saturday. And then it's like, well, I've got to get to basketball practice on Monday. So literally straight into the gym. And I was slow in the gym. It doesn't exactly translate. It takes a little while to get those fast twitch muscles firing again. And I would get sore from it. But I was still trying to do that. And then as a junior, I won the state meet again, but I had an injury to my knee that was really going to be inflamed if I played basketball. And really that injury kind of turned my sports career into, this is probably going to get me through college, and I need to protect these knees and these legs. And it just became time to focus on something. It was just an obvious transition of like, okay, I've got to get this better. And then just, once I fully focused on it, I got a lot better. So from junior to senior year in high school, junior year I had run maybe 4:25 or so on the mile. And then as a senior, I ended up running 4:08. Which was 5th nationally, and it was like, okay, this is my new path.
Yeah. When they put that national stat in front of you, it's like, oh, now it's real, right? It's not just I'm playing it, against the people in my state or my district or my city or whatever it is. It's like, oh no, this is everyone in the country that wants to run, which then, like I said, it makes it more of a choice to be like, I don't want to be putting pressure on my knees and trying to. I'm terrible at basketball too, like 2 left feet. So anything to put pressure on my knees is a no-go. That's why I love golf. But yeah, that's definitely a sign that's like, I'm gonna go to school. What offers did you get and where did you go?
I had quite a few offers from around. NCAA, you get to take your 5 visits. I don't know if that's still the rule or not, but I visited places like Texas and Wisconsin. I went to the University of Tulsa. Loved it. Sometimes I wish I would have made that decision. Coach Clark, I'll send this to you so you can listen to that. And then I visited Arkansas and Stanford, and those were the 2 that really came down to the wire. Stanford had just won a couple of national titles in cross country, and then Arkansas was on about their 32nd of 40 national titles. And so, I mean, I couldn't have gone wrong. But yeah, I ended up opting to go over to to Arkansas.
And scream pig suey for 4
Yeah,
years.
I
still don't get that, right?
That wasn't my favorite part,
Yeah.
honestly. We would do that even after cross-country meets if we won and they presented the trophies or whatever, then we'd have to, woo pig suey and I'm not doing it today.
Okay.
I'm proud.
Damn it.
I'm proud of my alma mater.
Yeah,
But it's not a good solo activity.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, when there's a group of you, it's okay, but like on your own, it's like, all right, cool. Sam, what about you?
It's a completely different story for me. If we're going to kind of, go through the timeline, and
let's
Mark's
do it.
been chatting about, his college or, transition to colleges. I was not a runner in high school. I did not run cross country. I didn't run track. It was just all soccer. And then I picked up tennis in high school also. And then really, I'd call it kind of walk on. You get some incentive money to go to college and play soccer or tennis at Southern Nazarene. But that was my first love, was soccer. And over the years in college, soccer really didn't work out. And I was just okay at tennis. I would go and, distinctly remember in NAIA, there was no age limit requirement. So there were a lot of, people that were semi-pro tennis players in NAIA, and me, I've only played a few years.
Right.
Trying to, every tournament you'd run into one, by the second round.
Yeah.
You might squeak out a win, and then by the second round you're playing like somebody that had a world ranking at one point in their life. It was.
How is this fair?
Like it isn't, but at the same time I was like, wow, I just played a professional athlete on the other side of the, they're beyond their prime, but still it was pretty cool. But yeah, that in a way kind of transitioned well, because by my senior year in college, I had promised a couple friends from high school that I would always try cross country out, and so I walked onto the cross country team, and I was, good at it, and so good at it that my walk-on year, my senior year, I actually won conference, senior athletic conference, and it became pretty prevalent. It was like, felt good to be winning transition, as opposed to like tennis was like, it just, if I could eke out a win, that was pretty good. But cross country is completely different.
You think, why haven't I done this sooner? Why didn't I start running sooner?
Oh, I mean, from a whole bunch of perspectives of, all of a sudden I'm like eligible for, scholarships. People are wanting to, pay for school now. It was a different experience.
Yeah. So the cross country running, is it a varied of distances, and you guys just focused on the mile, or like how does that work?
So cross country, most distance runners in college, and I would say anybody who runs 1,500 meters or a mile and up, they run cross country in the fall as well.
Gotcha.
So cross country is usually 8 kilometers or sometimes 10-kilometer races in the NCAA, which 5 miles or 6 miles, and it becomes just a season of just kind of we call it base training. You're building up your base, just your strength and your endurance. And it actually really complements track running very well, because you don't want to spend all year running fast.
Sure.
You segment your training, and so fall season around here anyway was just always a good block of just good long distance training. And we would even after college we would end that block in early December all the way up to a half marathon. So even though our focus is getting faster at the mile, part of that, at least for a period of the year, we saw, hey, running a fast half marathon is going to be important as well. In its own time.
So kind of just strength and conditioning, then consistency and building. You're right, until you get to that. I mean, if you're a weightlifter listening, it's like a bunch of reps, and then you go in for your 1 rep max after like 8 weeks or whatever, building up to that.
Yeah, even football players, right? They have spring football. What are they doing? Man, they're just building their strength and their bulk. And same different discipline, obviously, but same idea. It's almost off-season track.
Yeah. What's it like running in Oklahoma in the heat? Or do you just?
It's heat and wind.
Heat and wind. True. Let's not forget running at Lake Hafner into a north wind is miserable. Cycling is also miserable as well. Yeah.
I think it makes you stronger. I've always looked at it as like it's just another obstacle, another hurdle. Like if you're having to get up at 5 to beat, the potential 100-degree weather, and it's 80 at 6 a.m., I think it just makes you a tougher runner. Same thing with the wind. It's I know Mark and I, we would line up our races, post college career in some of the best weather we could. Like you'd go out to Stanford or Walnut, California, or Indianapolis at 11 p.m. on in the summer, and it's just beautiful weather to go race a mile in, and it works a whole lot better because you've been working and training in a lot more difficult weather.
Yeah,
and I think it transitions well.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, and also kind of similar to that is like a lot of teams go and do altitude training, right, or whatever it is. Like they're in the mountains, and you're right. Like it's good to see it that way, because if you see it the other way, then you've already on the back foot, right? Is that a term? Did I just use a running term? Wow, that was
the back foot. Yeah.
That was not intentional. I promise.
No, I actually
caught me by
learned.
surprise.
I actually learned that from Sam a little bit. Moving over to Fayetteville, the weather was a little bit nicer over there. It's just not quite as harsh and windy. The average temps in the summer are 5 degrees cooler, and so when I came back here, kind of reluctantly for my running career anyway, just because there weren't as many people running around here at that level. I would complain. I hated running in the wind and the heat, and I was kind of mad. I was frustrated by that. It's like, well, I have to be here, and I do want to continue my running. But I remember distinctly, Sam saying, it's just going to make us better. Like, bring on the wind. I'm like, what are you talking about? Just let me complain here.
I just want to be in my own. Well, running's such a mental thing too, isn't it? Because you're alone, you're in your own thoughts. You don't listen to music when you run. It's just you and your breath.
Yeah.
That's it. And like the birds or the wind. Sam, obviously, winning conference was a pretty awesome achievement. Is there anything else that stands out for your running?
Oh, I mean, that was just really the start. That was the start of my running career. The unfortunate side is when you start your senior year in college, your eligibility has already started. So one of the things that really helped out of it is I was able to get a master's out of it, because I still had, effectively, at that start, a whole nother year after my senior year. Yeah. But cross country transitions into track, and I had some speed besides my cross country skills. I was able to pull off some great times just in that spring. In my first year of ever running track, I think I ran a 4:14 mile. It got me All-American status in indoor, and then I think a 3:55 in the 1500 that summer. And all of that was kind of going on. I was playing 2 sports, so I wasn't, and still learning just the sport of running. Mark was talking about building up base. I had no base. It was like I would practice tennis for 3 hours and then go play 2 or 3 times a week and then go race on Friday, and it didn't last. It became pretty clear that I need to be running a lot more to get a lot better.
But then you also won conference again, right?
Yeah, I graduated and then actually took a year off because I had got my career job at Delta as a network administrator at Delta Dental in 2001, and so I kind of took a year off and just built up a base from there, and then went back to school in 2004. And so I'd kind of got the full, at least 4 years of collegiate running, pseudo in a way. But then, I came back and won conference in cross country. I believe it was 2004. And then we had a good crew of recruits. So our whole team got to go to nationals in cross country. And some of that team, my brother was on that team. It was pretty awesome to run with him. And he was on 4x8 team and DMR team. And so we actually won in, I believe, 2005, the distance medley relay and indoor nationals, which was pretty awesome for a small school like SMU to go up against some of the other bigger schools and just beat that. We were, complete underdog story.
Oh, for sure,
and being able to beat some of the big, heavy favorites at the time.
Well, and even just making it to nationals, right? Like, there's such a cool thing and such a great experience that not very many people across all sports get to do. And, you be in there and you represent your school and you go to the dinner or whatever it is. Like, it's a really cool experience.
Yeah.
To be, you're at the something that you work for all year round, and you guys make it, and then, like I said, you think the stars align and you win.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
Mark, what about you? Anything stand out from college?
Yeah, a couple things. So I had a very different experience than Sam in college. I went in with all the hype, as a top recruit to a place that had a lot of fast draw. I was no longer a big fish in a small pond. I was a medium-sized fish I guess I'm botching the saying now, but in a huge pond.
Yeah.
These guys were fast.
Yeah.
I had Canada's top miler, and then we had a couple of Kenyans on the team and a guy over from Ireland, and And so, yeah, I was low man on the totem pole, and I just ran myself into the ground. You know, the heart was there, the desire was there. I thought I was going to be an Olympian at some point, and I just kept running myself into the ground. So just injury followed injury, and it was a very frustrating experience. So I finally, there were a couple of highlights in there, you know, ran some fast times here and there, and then was on a national championship team. We went to nationals in cross country in 1999. And I will never forget that. I won't go into it too long, but it was 16 degrees outside and about a 40-mile-per-hour wind up in Iowa, Ames, Iowa. But we had a really tough team, and we were able to win nationals. And then shortly after that, I got injured again, and that was it. So I kind of hung up the shoes with a year and a half. Sam would have killed for that extra eligibility. I gave it up and started playing intramural sports and riding a motorcycle. Like, it was just I pulled, you know, 180 in about the middle of college. So
but you are, if I'm getting this right, one of only 4, right, Oklahomans to break the 4-minute mark?
Yeah, I didn't do that in college.
Okay.
Yeah, that did not happen in college.
Right.
So we'll get to that.
We'll get there. Okay, yeah, let's save that for a second. But I want to touch on this because I know we're going to bring it up. Previous podcast guest and Olympian from Tulsa, or I say from Scotland, and was at Tulsa. Chris O'Hare, you mentioned that you may have had some run-ins with Chris O'Hare. Look, there's another little running thing as well. God, I'm good at this. Tell that story, because I'm just going to clip this and send it to him just to say, hey,
Sure.
I interviewed someone today who actually you raced against.
Well, I mean, I'm going to continue a little bit with the transition. You know, post college, I was kind of done. There was nothing, you know, from my experience. I was working full time. I mean, I only get 2 or 3 weeks of vacation a year. How do you compete and run with all that? And then at some point, you know, met up with Mark and started training. And I'll just fast forward because we'll probably come back to, you know, how we met up. One thing that runners tend to do is, you know, all the people that you haven't beat, like that have just been right there, but there are a few that stand out that you've beat, and he may not know me.
Oh, don't worry, I have the same list of people on the golf course. I have the same list. There's people who are like now professional golfers earning millions, and I have beaten them once before. But
it's like my one, you know.
Totally get it.
I had one of the best races I had in my collegiate career at the University of Arkansas Last Chance Meet, and I ran a 4:02 indoor mile, which is my best, you know, ever. And it just happened to be against Chris O'Hare. Again, he probably would not know who I was, but he was a freshman at the time. But that is like one of the notches in my belt of being able to compete against not only an Olympian, but, you know, I mean, what a spectacular, amazing athlete he is. I'm honored really to be able to, be able to share a track with people like that.
He told a great story about his first like training run in Tulsa when we had him on the podcast, and he's like, I just thought I was going to go down the river for a run, and I took a wrong turn and got lost, and it's like the middle of the summer. Someone has pulled up, and he's just like sweating and completely out of breath, like needing water, and they're like, can I help you? And he's like, yeah, do you have any water or anything? Or like, how do I get back to campus? He's like, just got here. It's a brilliant story. But thankfully, Oklahoma people are very nice, and he was taken care of. So that's awesome. So tell us about, go back then. How'd you guys meet?
It kind of maybe touched on this in our last interview. A guy that I ran against, Wade Miller, is somehow related to Mark.
Cousin.
Cousin. And this was after I ran at SNU. I was still doing a couple local road races, and one I liked going to was the Turkey Trot. Is that right?
No, it was the night, Midnight Streak.
Oh, that Midnight Streak was one. But then the Bethany Freedom Run was another one.
Okay, yeah.
That's real. We met at local road races.
Yeah.
Mark's from Edmond. I'm still living in Bethany, and meet up, and I recognize talent when I see it. And Mark is fast.
I gotta try and beat this
Mark
guy
is
now.
really, really good. I put him out of my league, and I look at it as like if I could find somebody local to train with, I'm probably going to get faster.
Yeah.
And we traded numbers, and I drove up to Edmond. I don't know if he would have driven to Bethany.
Some guy wants to come and train with me. Oh, I guess I gotta go run with him. Yeah.
But he had some great places to train. Dirt roads north of Edmond, and he had connections on tracks, so it made sense.
You ended up as a wonderful training partner. But at the beginning of it, we had to whip you into shape a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He's like, where's Sam at? Come on, Sam, you gotta keep up. Yeah. I'd be terrible. I mean, it's just such a hard thing to do, especially when you're running at pace. And like I said, you hadn't had a base too much, and Mark's been doing it forever, right? So, but I'm sure like that, having that friendship and building that, and then you progressing and having, Mark, picking Mark's brain on everything, like that's really cool to have. And now you guys are in business together, right? So back then you probably didn't think, well, we'd have a business together. Now you do, which is even better. So at this point, then, are you back into running after college? Like you kind of hung it up?
I hung it up for a while. Like I said, I really did a 180. After I graduated college, I literally rode my motorcycle for 3 months and had a big time. And I didn't want anything to do with running because I felt it had burned me a little bit. I was upset.
Yeah.
And I got to a point. I was teaching high school physics in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and I really enjoyed that. But living by myself, and I got to a point where it's like, it's 4 p.m. I've already watched all the Seinfeld reruns I can watch. I should go do something. Yeah. And the nagging feeling that, in high school, I remember very distinctly, one of the coaches around said, you're going to run under 4 minutes one day.
Yeah.
Actually, he said, you're going to do it in college, and I didn't do that. In fact, I hadn't even run faster than I did in high school at that distance. And so I just had this nagging feeling of I knew that I had not run as up to the ability that I have. Can I talk about God-given ability? And I wanted to honor that. And so I just kind of had this nag to get back into it. So there was a 2 or 3 year gap there where I really didn't do any running at all. And then a nag to say, okay, let's get going again. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and it's almost like better to have that kind of fire relit, right? Because you've, and this happens in every sport, right? You're good at something, you get riddled with injuries, you burn out, and you kind of pissed off. You never want to be around it again, and it leaves you a bad taste in your mouth, and you just like don't have good memories about this. Like the last experience you ever running, you weren't happy or whatever. And then, like I said, you take a few years off. Well, you pick up the clubs again, or you put the boots on again, and you're just like, no, I'm still like, my body is like had 2 years off, and it's like back into, not in shape, but it's ready to train again.
Yep.
Kind of like the year that you had off, building, right, from running, and then you just like, why can't I do this? And then you, like I said, you find time. You're teaching, you got time morning and afternoon, and you just get back into it.
Yeah, so I started back. It was a great place to run. I could still, my college coach was gracious to let me still come around the team and train with those guys. And they were, fast. Like, it hurt. Like, I would only show up when I was well rested. And they're like, man, how do you get in shape so fast? Well, I didn't run 12 miles yesterday.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, I've been having hot and cold showers, ice baths, and cryo and everything else, like just to be ready for this one training session.
But I got back running pretty well and ended up running 4:06 in the mile indoors, and then coming and running a 4:04, and suddenly I was like, okay, I'm on.
It's close.
I'm on track here to do this. And then I started dating my, soon-to-be wife, Darcy. But the problem with that was she lived back in Oklahoma, back in Edmond.
Yeah.
And so there was this tension of like, well, somebody's got to move. This isn't going to work forever.
Right.
You can't be married and live 3 hours apart. So it made so much more sense for me to come here. My family's still here. Her family is in Shawnee. She had a great job with Oklahoma Christian University, and it just made all the sense in the world. And that's why I was mad at the Oklahoma heat and wind and lack of people to train with, because I was really in almost like a running mecca at the time. And so when I came back, it was like, yes, I will move here, but the one thing I won't compromise is my running goals. Yeah. Like, I'm going to do that. And that caused its own issues from time to time. Yeah. But, and that's, right around that time, that first summer that I was back is when Sam, caught me at a couple of races, and we're like, hey, let's go.
So when you guys meet up, you're working at Delta Dental at this time. Where do you get a job then when you come back? Do you go into teaching?
I went into teaching at Oklahoma Christian University.
Okay.
And that really, I worked hard at it, don't get me wrong, but it afforded me a flexibility that I need. I was always amazed at Sam because he would go to work at 6:30 or 7 in the morning just so that he could get off at 3:30 to train. He was getting up early. I wasn't. I was thinking,
this class isn't until 9. I'm good.
True amateur status.
Wander into class. Hey, what are we learning today? I'm teaching.
You did say on the previous podcast, you were like, if I can stay in bed for an extra 30 seconds, I will do that.
Yes, yes.
I'm on the way to the office, brushing my teeth.
To this day, Sam still rises earlier than I do. But but I had time. I had time to put into it, and it translated into getting faster. So that first year back, I don't want to tell too long of a story here, but I guess we'll just continue to segue. But that first year back, I was here in 2005, so I qualified for the 2006 U.S. Indoor Championship.
Okay.
This is in about February. And went up there and just got destroyed. And I was in the race.
Humbled.
Yeah, I got humbled. I was in the race. I was in the race even with 600 meters to go.
Led it.
I led a little bit of it.
Yeah.
That was fun. People were watching me on ESPN and they thought that was the coolest thing ever.
It was.
And I was like,
okay, it's like
Sam
some
watched
training
it.
partner right there. Yeah.
But my mindset wasn't there. I wanted to win, and I was up against Olympians and guys like Alan Webb. He went on to run, the all-time American record in the mile, and just crushed me over the last, 400 or 600 meters of the race.
Yeah.
I just didn't have the gear that they did. So, what do? I get mad and I go out. This is in Boston. You're getting ready to go to Boston. I go out and run by the race. This is kind of my tendencies. When I have a bad race, I go out and run like 8 or 10 miles.
Go through some serious pain.
I punish myself now.
Yeah.
And I was ready to hang up the shoes. I was frustrated because I was completely solo. No coach, no nothing, nobody to run with. Just every workout, every day was solo at that time.
But also super dedicated as well.
Very dedicated, yeah. And so I got engaged. And at that point, it was no longer fitting. Where does running fit into a lifestyle? Well, it was really starting to get pushed out.
Yeah.
And that's where a guy came into my life. His name is Ashley Benjamin. And Ashley, I will send this to you, so you'll enjoy listening to this. But Ashley literally came into my office at Oklahoma Christian University one afternoon. And I found out later it was the second time that he tried, but the first time I wasn't there. Yeah. And out of the blue, he introduces himself. Hey, my name's Ashley. It's like, isn't that a girl's name? That's what I'm thinking on the inside. Who is this guy? And, I coached for a while at Kansas 20 years ago. I was a graduate assistant at Ohio State for a while, and I follow the sport of running. And I just thought, maybe I could help you a little bit. I heard you're hanging up the shoes, and I thought I could help you. And I'm scratching my head literally like, who does this? Who just waltzes in and says, I'm going to help you. Yeah. And I'm looking for the strings attached. What, I got to pay you something?
Right.
Or
what do you need from me?
Yeah. And it turns out,
am I teaching your kid and they need an A? How's this going on here, right?
And it turns out he's going to buy me lunch. He's like, tell you what, just come to lunch with me. One time a week or once every other week. I'll pay. And it's like, well, yeah, okay.
Yeah, free lunch, why not? Yeah, of course.
And I didn't call him my coach for a long time. We kind of developed a friendship. I called him my consultant. And he looked through literally years of my training logs and just analyzed them. And I thought, this is the most boring reading material ever. Right. And he loved it. He dug into it, and he kind of found some imbalance in my training and thought, well, we need to change these things. I said, well, if we change those things, I'm going to get injured again. I've tried that before. Anyway, he really just edged his way little by little in, let me get married, gave me some time, gave me some space, and also just taught me how to run, not as a collegiate athlete, which is like ultra dedicated, 2 times a day. If I miss a run, like I need to go to confessional or something like that. Really, it plays with your mind. You miss a practice session.
I know exactly what you mean. I
could.
And also, you doubt it when you're younger too, and you're like, "Oh, I missed something."
Or you listen to somebody else's training. It's like, well, they're doing this. I'm not even doing anything close to that. And he allowed me to. He didn't allow me to. He showed me how to kind of set running into a new life as a married person with a full-time job, and you can do it a different way and have a different mentality about it. And it really completely saved my running career. I was done in 2006 before I ever met Sam. Yeah. I was done if he didn't step into my office that day.
How old are you at this point?
At this point?
Yeah.
42.
No, like at that. Sorry. At this point when he walks into your life.
27.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that's interesting is like athletes in general, like there's a fine period between like 23 and 29, right? That like it happens in golf where like your body is fully developed at this point, right? And you've been practiced. Like for me, I've been playing golf since I was 6, and after I graduated, you know, like when you're in school and you think, oh, these guys graduated, they're done, right? Now I'm playing against guys who are like, 30, 31, 32, whatever, and they're still going. But like when we were 24 to 29, like we still had it.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So is it kind of the same in running? You have a totally different mindset to it.
Yeah, well,
Like
I could talk for
just
like hours on this, and I
Yeah.
won't. But
there's something there, right? That's like that period.
the American collegiate system is really difficult for sports like golf and track and tennis and sports that don't have a lot of money in them,
Right.
not large sports, because once you finish your eligibility, there's almost nothing there for
You're
you.
done.
You're
Yeah.
done. It's completely solo by. There's no support.
Right.
You're earning your paycheck, and then on the side you're running, and it's really back to the days of amateur athletics.
Yeah.
And that's where we were. You know, it's just really fighting that battle. Kind of contrast that with a European system. Sam and I had the privilege, really, of going over and racing in Europe a couple years after that. And they have a club system where, you know, clubs are really disjointed from the educational process. And that club system supports athletes from a young age all the way up to whatever age they want to keep competing at.
Yeah.
And when I first got over that, I thought, well, that's weird. You know, this is a strange new concept to me.
Right.
But having spent a couple summers over there and coming back, you know, as a post-collegiate runner, you know, I really realized, like, man, I wish we had that kind of system here.
Yeah, because like you said, I mean, it's the same in golf, right? You have that support system from, you know, the minute that you're kind of old enough to make a team. And in golf, it's obviously handicaps, right? So there's every golf club back home, you join a golf club, whatever level you're at handicap, there's a team that you can join,
Right.
within the club. And even when you're a kid, like when you become a junior, like it's over the age of 12 or whatever, you're eligible to play for the junior team, and then when you turn 18, you can play for another. And like even when you play for your county, from our county, it was under 12s, 14s, 16s, 18s, and then men's team. So you've always got something to aspire for going forward. Kind of, I assume the same with running too. But and then you know, you got the guys who have been doing it forever. You know, they're under 18s or on the men's team that are just like have come through the whole system. So everyone knows who they are, everyone knows their family, and then you just build this giant network of support.
Yeah.
And the club is generally run by volunteers,
Yes.
right? You know, and it's just people who have a passion and people who've been through that system and now go to the coaching side and have just been around it forever. But
Right.
it takes years and years to develop that, and
Yeah.
someone's got to start it. But I think out here the schools have, you know, like we don't really watch school sports back home, whereas out here it's like,
pretty
I
big.
mean, there's, you know, thousands of people at a football game or at a running meet or whatever it is. Like, no one cares about school stuff back home unless it's rugby.
Right.
And even then, it's only the wives and girlfriends that show up,
Right.
or whatever, you know, mums or whatever.
And so you know it from the other side. It's
Yeah.
different. Not a lot of people understand that club
Yeah.
system and how it could be so much better. But
That's
I didn't want to get too sidetracked
no,
on
it's,
that. But
it's totally. I
There,
totally,
but it is a
totally
big
get
deal.
it.
Like,
It
I
is.
mean, there are pros to the athletics being tied to education, because there's a whole lot of people that have degrees
Oh, for sure.
that
Free
probably wouldn't have
education.
gotten
100%.
degrees. But on the flip side, there's like a lot of these sports it ends
Right.
at the end of college.
Yeah. Definitely. So you guys just start competing then in these tournaments that are not to do with college. I guess kind of like what it is for me as a mid-amateur golfer now. It's like you have these events all over the country, and you can apply and you can get in, and you build up like a golf resume or a running resume, and be like, hey, I used to be this good. These are my current times. Will you let me in? Is that kind of how it works?
Yeah, in a way.
largely, yeah.
Yeah.
You have to, I don't know about necessarily golf, but it's probably the same way. You kind of have to seek out where the fast races are going to be. You got to
Right.
seek out where the fast runners are going to show up, and then you've got to go contact the race directors. And for somebody like me and Mark, we're trying to highlight every little bit that we can to try to
Yeah.
get that race director to let us in that race, and it's rinse and repeat. All around the country. Our goal was to sub 4 in the mile, and so we were really hunting
Trying to
out
find
where
that.
those fast mile races were going to be.
Right. That's
Track and cross country is different than maybe any other sport that I know of, because we could still enter many of the college meets. Obviously, we're not going to go and compete in the conference meet or something like that.
Sure, but you could still
a lot of meets are open. So
Really? I didn't know
if
that.
I can run a 4:04 in the mile and I want to go over to Arkansas and run in their meet, it's like, hey, you can run a 4:04. You can run, but just call them like unattached runners. And you compete right in there with the collegiates at a lot of meets. So we had that going for us.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, for sure.
Because usually, like, it's like for golf, it's totally separate. You know, I could never try and tee it up against, you know, whoever.
In a
the top
college,
yeah, I mean, I'd love to. It'd be
tournament,
awesome. But like, unless you play in like, you know, it's not a college event, but it's one that all the college kids are going to be at. You know, like a big open qualifier, U.S. Open qualifier or whatever. Like, that's the only time you're probably going to play against kids of that, you know, level. But yeah, it would be awesome to rock up to, you know, Stillwater or whatever and play against all the OSU kids.
We loved running against the young guys.
Yeah,
you know,
especially when you beat them, right? It's just like, keep training, kid. You'll learn one time. Yeah,
not all the time, but there's some really good college runners there.
So you just keep running, and this guy just starts to train you, and then you're learning from the group and from Mark as well. Yeah. So you all just kind of like I guess you develop your own running club.
In a way,
small little group of guys that keep running.
Yeah, what it kind of evolved to, like I after a year of training under Ashley, you know, I kind of asked him, hey, what do you think about, you know, bringing in Sam? And he's like, yeah, sure, I think that's a great idea. And so Ashley started really coaching both of us at the time, probably more me, and Sam at that point was more tagging along, running my workouts. It was probably more tailored to me. And then we also got plugged in with the Oklahoma Christian University cross-country team. So I got hired on as an assistant coach. And so I didn't have any real difficult duties, but it also gave me the opportunity to train with that team. Yeah. And Sam could train with that team as well. So we'd go, you know, get hammered by these college kids, you know, running mile repeats or running hard, you know, long runs in the dirt roads on the weekends. And it gave us finally more of a community to run with, which is just so
it's really important.
It makes it more exciting and more relatable, and kind of that became our new community.
That's awesome. And did you, I mean, you probably never thought yourself would being a coach or whatever, but it's like, I guess your teaching background, it was kind of inevitable at some point.
Yeah, and I'd done a little bit of coaching at the high school level when I was in Fayetteville as well, but always as an assistant, because I was front and center in my mind was I want to get faster. So at that point in time, I'm not looking to, you know, help other people get. It's a very selfish endeavor, I guess.
Well, I mean, that's the great thing about being a runner and being in an individual sport is like it's just you. I mean, I know you're running on a cross-country team, right? And sometimes you have team strategies or whatever, but like at the end of the day, it's you in your head running. You've got to reach your goals, and sometimes you might not even want to tell people what your goal is because it's, you know, it's the only thing you're working towards. But tell me about that time then when you do run that sub 4.
Well, so Ashley, gotta again just totally credit him for this. He started planting seeds in my mind of like, hey, you really want to run fast, you need to go over to Europe to run. And I thought, well, that's awesome. I've heard of, you know, pro American athletes going over there and doing that, but how do you even where do you start? You know,
honey, we're going to Europe. You can do the French Riviera. I'm going to be running the whole time.
Seriously, that's almost what it was. And so
that's brilliant.
2008, I was trying to make the 2008 Olympic trials, and I came up just short of that, and it was a big disappointment to me. But I had the fitness built up for it, and so Ashley said, "You just go over to Europe and get your feet wet over there." And so I got on a plane to Ireland, and thank goodness one of my college teammates was on the same plane because he knew what he was going to do when he got there. Like I literally,
just go to Ireland. I'll figure it out.
I literally wasn't sure. I knew I had to get from Dublin over to Cork, Ireland, which is on the other coast for my first meet, but I didn't know how I was going to get there. And he was there, and he's like, "Oh no, my agent rented me a car, you know, and a hotel." And so I literally bummed my way across Ireland.
How many seats are in this car?
Yeah. Seriously. And so I just started racing my first meet over there. I didn't even race myself. I talked to the meet director, and I ended up pacing 2 races and made, you know, I don't know, 600 euros total that first day, just trying to kind of cover, trying to legitimize my you know, amateur endeavor here. Yeah. And I think he got third in the 1500 and came back and won the 3000, and, you know, took like a 4,000 euro paycheck or something like that. And after the meet, I'm in the office in the clubhouse like, hey, I need my money. I'm about to leave. And I'm like, his name was Alistair Craig. If you're a running fan, you might remember he was an Olympic finalist in the 5,000 that year. But and I'm like, Alistair, aren't you going to get your money? He's like, no, my agent will take care of me. It's like total carefree.
No worries about it.
Man, that's awesome. But anyway, so we went to Europe. I raced a few times that summer. Not terribly successful, although a ton of fun and just a learning experience for me. And then and I said, Sam, like, you need to come. This was really cool. Like, people actually go to track meets there. There's money in the sport. There's excitement around, and there's a ton of fast runners. And kind of Ashley's idea was why people run fast in Europe, why especially Americans run fast in Europe, is that's all you got to think about. You race, and then you chill. And rest, and then 3 days later you race, and then you chill, and you strip off all the responsibilities of daily life, and you just run faster.
They have to run,
And he was absolutely right about it.
Just clearing the mind, and like you said, you have one focus, and that's to run, and that's it.
So fast forward a year, 2009, and we convinced Sam to go over there, and that's a huge commitment for him. He's working a job with like strict vacation time, and so he's saving time to go over to Europe. And so I get a head start on him and run a couple races over there, and I'm fitter than I've ever been, and excited, and running personal best times. And then, Sam shows up, and we rent our bicycles together to travel around Leuven, Belgium. And then I'm trying to get Sam in some meets, and he doesn't quite have the street creds yet to get into some of these. Largely, like I'm Sam's
because
agent.
you haven't ran. It's because you just haven't ran the race. It's not because you're not fast enough. It's because you just haven't been at a certain event.
I wouldn't say I'm Sam's agent, but I'm certainly like his advocate.
For sure.
And Sam shows up, and I chuckle about this every time, and I've got a picture of it. He's literally off the plane for maybe 36 hours, and he's still got jet lag. And we get him a spot in the 800 in his first meet, and he ends up sharing a lane with an Olympian, David Kremenacher, one of America's top talents. And Sam's there like in his S&U shorts.
Lined up next to David.
Homegrown jersey, lined up next to like all Adidas gear. He looks like just a stallion.
He's walked straight out of the Adidas store. In a pressed gear.
He's a super, super nice guy.
That was awesome. So I know this is a story that Sam wants to tell, and I'll stop hogging the mic here, but I'm trying to get Sam into some meets and having a hard time doing it. And one of the ways that you can kind of get in over there, and here too, is to do some pacing jobs. They call it a rabbit in track. So your job, maybe it's 1,500 meters, and your job, you've got to get to 2 laps of the track, 800 meters, and we want your pace to be. We want you there in 1 minute and 56 seconds. Like it's to the second, sometimes to the 10th of a second of this is how we want the race to go. Because they've got money on the line for different records and different sponsorships and so forth. So, I one of the guys that's helping us over there says, "Hey, your buddy's here. Can he pace this 800 coming up? And if he paces it, we can get him into the next meet. And these are like kind of A level meets. These are really good meets." And he says, okay, I need 51 seconds for the 400 meters, and he's going to pace the 800 meter race. And I'm kind of like, scratching my head, like, please, Sam, like,
is this doable? The math doable?
I know you're fast, and I have a feeling that under the gun, and with a crowd of people and with the big field, like you can run 51 seconds. And so we agreed to it, and then things started to change a little bit.
So when it's agreed, do you know that you agreeing this as well, or is he agreeing it for you?
We're all in the same email chain or text chain, and I'll kind of jump in and take over. And I only get like 3 weeks of vacation. I've worked it out, so I've got my first meet squared away, and we talked about that one was quite the experience. And I ran really well there too. And then we're trying to line up the rest of the meets, and so I really don't have much of a choice.
Right.
The same race director is directing the next race. So it's like, all right, I'll pace for you, And before I know it, I was going to be pacing 51, the B heat, which is the slower heat. And then the pacer backs out of the pacing duties for the A heat. And so they ask me, and I'm like, I don't really have much of a choice. But I'm like, I ran a 49 split once in college in a 4x4. I was like, I think I could do this, although it's not something I'm really training for.
Right.
So it's like, sure, we go from 51.5 to 50.5. I mean, I'll kind of fast forward. By the time we're starting, they're asking for a 50 flat or sub 50.
Yeah.
And like off a standing start, it's not somebody handing me the baton.
Right.
Like no running start or anything. And I mean, it is a huge meet. There's Olympians. There's, future Olympians in that race. It's on national Belgium television with the big old, camera shining up and introducing everybody, and a lot of stress and pressure to perform. Before I know it, like the gun's off and we're all out sprint, and I'm all out as fast as I can go. And I look over,
50 seconds as
and I
fast
look
as
over
possible.
after 100 meters of a 400 meter pacing job, and like they're like parallel to me, and I haven't moved over, and I haven't even moved over all the way to like start pacing this heat. And so I'm like thinking like I'm all out, but I've still got a little bit left. So I burn my guns. Like I just do everything I can to get in front of them. So I'm at 150, and I'm feel like I'm spent. And I've got like I haven't even made it even close to 400. I haven't even made it to 200, and I'm like, it is just the difference between where I'm at in my athletic abilities and where like Olympians are
You're
at.
not training for that race
exactly.
either.
Yeah, and I'm not training for that race.
But you did have to get ahead, right?
I had to get ahead,
yeah.
and so before I know it, it's like 200 meters, and they're passing me. And so I mean, it was an awful experience. But I'm thinking like I am just going to slow these guys down, and so I bail off the track.
Yeah.
Which is like I felt terrible because I mean they're here to run really fast. They're relying on.
But like you did not expect to be doing that, of course.
I didn't.
Right?
It got out of hand.
Yeah.
I mean, there was the job, and then the job changed.
And then they're like, oh no, you can do 50.
I mean,
actually, no, can you do this? No.
It was that.
I mean, I can't say no, but at the same time, I'll give it all I can. It's like,
and I felt awful. I mean, I went around and talked to the racer. The race director was utterly pissed off, and I've never understood like a French
like,
person cuss before, but I could understand everything he was saying.
The F word translates.
It does. It sure does. So does the S word and a whole bunch of other 4-letter words. But it was quite the experience. And then you really to go talk to like Olympian runners afterwards and just apologize. So like I'm really sorry, guys, and it kind of shut them up. They were literally talking about it after the race, and I'm going up to talk to them. And they in something Mark had even mentioned is a lot of the U.S. and Canadian runners kind of were around this college campus somehow, staying in the dorms or in apartments nearby. And while he flew over to Ireland, it's part of the story too. I'm taking a bus to the meet. And I have to take a bus back. Yeah. And so I'm sitting
with all these guys.
A lot of these guys. Literally, one was from Belgium. Sitting right behind me, talking how bad the pacing job of the 800 was. It felt like the whole 2 hours he was talking. Like I'm like, I part of me was like, I wanted to turn around. It's like that was me. That was me. I get it. I get it.
Can't apologize anymore.
I mean, I don't know how much more time we have, but I mean, I could talk another hour about it. But I'll kind of speed it up. Like I tried to get to the next meet. They didn't let me in. I'll let Mark jump in on his Ireland piece, but I was ready to go home that night. I was like, this is a pointless trip. I'm glad I didn't.
Right.
I stuck it out, worked out a couple more times, and then really my next 2 races, the 1500 and the 800, were my PRs. Yeah. So it's one of those stories of like, you fall flat on your face, don't give up. I have it, my 2 PRs in the 15 and the 8, and one of them was like, Brad said I was beat Mark. Edit that out. It was my best race ever. I got second in Virton, Belgium, and I had a great time down there, or up there or whatever. But I can't go over to Mark because it's my worst day ever, and he's having his best day over.
Yeah, the flip side of that story.
Yeah, because you're probably calling him saying, "You'd never guess what happened," and he's like, "Oh no, you'll never guess what happened."
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Yeah. So I couldn't get into this meet that he was pacing at, but I did get into a mile, and that's why I was over there that year. Is I wanted to run the mile. Yeah. And there aren't very many opportunities to do that. So I had an opportunity to run a mile in Dublin the same day. And so I'd taken a Ryanair flight over there, cheap budget here.
Just you and your backpack. That's all you need, because it'll charge you everything else if you don't. Yeah.
And I'm at the mile. It's called the Morton Mile. It's a Morton Invitational there in Dublin, and it's a big meet. This is a meet that has history going back like into the 1940s, and had world records in the 2 mile in the 1950s. My college coach who ended up winning 40 national championships. He was from Ireland, and he set records on that track a long time ago. So there's all this history.
So it's like the St. Andrews of running then,
it's
right?
It's generally like that. But in 2009 there was a bit of a down year in sponsorship. It's probably the year after the Olympics, maybe just kind of a down year overall. And so I come in there and the field's really not as hot as it usually is. It's me and a couple other good Americans and a Canadian and one of my college teammates from Kenya that I finally managed to beat for the only time in my career. But and so I'm in this mile, and I had one of the days of my life. It's like, this is easy. I'm running 4-minute pace, and this feels easy. And so I sat and then just kicked, and I don't often outkick people for a win, but I outkicked them for a win. I ran like 401.2, and I thought, man, I just squandered my best opportunity ever to run under 4 minutes. I felt like I could have run 3:57 that day, but it was a race, And so the prize is €1,000, and they bring this big heavy trophy. It's like the U.S. Open, It's like the names on this trophy are like Olympic champions and record. Right. I mean, it's just like, and then there's Mark Thompson 2009, and so we go to the clubhouse that night by the track, and guys are toasting to me and like buying me Guinnesses.
Did you
and
fill
stuff.
It up?
It was unbelievable. Like it was like in running heaven. I've never had a running night like that in my life.
Whereas he's on this bus.
That's exactly right.
Complete opposite.
And so I fly back to Belgium, and we meet up for pizza. And Sam is literally, I mean, he's I'm lucky he didn't already purchase his ticket home. Yeah. I mean, he was ready to go. And I'm wanting to share my fun news with him, And we had a fun conversation in the pizza shop there, and convinced Sam to kind of just wait, hang out a little bit. You're here, let's just keep going. But suddenly I was his friend, but also like his counselor, and we were able to keep him there.
Yeah, and then like I said, you went on and ran your 2 PRs from literally coming from the worst place probably mentally that you've been to running in these 2 races. It's good that you got into those 2 races, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, hopefully, the race director doesn't call someone else and be like, no,
don't let that guy.
We've seen this
guy's bad luck. You do not want this guy. Somebody talked me into putting him in a race as a pacer, and you don't want to trust him.
But we had 2 races left of equivalent mile distance. Yeah. We had the 1,500 meters, and I didn't feel wonderful that night. In fact, Sam came around me with about 50 meters to go and just blitzed it and ran his lifetime best, and had one of the days of his life, actually,
Are you smiling as you pass him?
Oh, yeah.
Just like, do you have the awareness in you that you're just like, got you?
Yeah. And then that was the last race, or maybe there's one more, and then there was a mile at the very end of it. It was the last race over there, and I knew it was going to be. So I literally had one chance to try to capitalize on it. Sam was in the race as well. And was able to come home, from that race with a 3:59 to my name, 3:59.29, and just it made everything worth it. I was 30 years old,
right?
And since I was 18 years old, people were telling me you should do this, and it's just one of those itches that needed to get scratched, and it just was really, really gratifying to finish it like that.
He probably doesn't think of it this way, but the first thing that came to my mind was that he was so pissed off that you beat him that he spurred him on to run that.
There you go.
No doubt about it.
Right?
I did not
he handed it to me in that mile. But some of the cool things about that is like I think there's literally a record of U.S. sub 4 milers. Like there's a historical list, and Mark is on that list. It's pretty impressive. And
329, that's my number.
Yeah. And then same thing, there's there's not many Oklahomans that have subbed for.
Who are the other 3?
There was one guy from Lawton that did it like in the early 80s. I actually don't know. I think I was either the second or the third native Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Some Oklahoma college kids from other places have done it, but Oklahoma born was either the second or the third. And then one of the athletes that I coached wasn't born in Oklahoma, but Frazier Legeese, coached him at Oklahoma Christian. He ended up going under 4 minutes as well. So
that's, that's not a long list of 4 people. That's like I am one of 4 at something, and that's a pretty good thing to have.
Well, if you narrow down the constraints, that far, well, okay, I must.
I mean, it's still like you said, like it's all of that training and that goal, and like to finally get there. It's on the last race, right? Of being
that was my last chance. I don't think I could have done it another year. I started head coaching. No longer was I assisting; I was the head coach.
Yeah.
And I pulled Sam on as an assistant, and so responsibilities were growing. And I had I not done it then, I don't know that I would have done it a year later.
So then that's when you guys start really working hard with Oklahoma Christian, and you've gone from just being an assistant to like, no, I actually really love doing this now. And then you get brought in as well as an assistant, and you start kind of coaching the kids, right? Did you bring Ashley in too, or was he just like...
No, I relied on him a lot. I would consult with him. We loved talking, running, and I had a top-notch male runner. His name was Silas Cusorio. That just was beautiful to watch. He ended up running 3 minutes and 56 seconds a couple of years later. So, and that was at 3:55. He ended up at 3:55. Yeah, I took him out to New York City and got him in the Wanamaker Mile, which is an indoor mile that's just world class, famous. And the collegiate record at the time was 3:55:02, and he ran 3:55:64. So he was, one of the all-time collegiate best. So we, Sam and I both just had a ton of fun, kind of translating our experiences and skills. I sent Silas over to Belgium. He ended up kind of doing the same tour.
Yeah.
And then also we, proudly one of my proudest professional achievements. Aside from that Morton Mile,
you're right.
Was we won a national championship. So on the men's side in 2011, we had a really strong team and ended up winning pretty decisively in the NAIA national championship. So just super proud of that time.
Yeah, I know we've got to touch on this because it means a lot to you, and also it running is such a personal thing, and just being away and being on your own and being in your own head. Your wife's battle with cancer and how much that means to you running and just kind of like running for her, right, and her memory, and just talk about that, because there might be someone listening who might be going through that similar situation right now. And just kind of how that is, and having a great support system of friends around you, and it might not be running, it could be golf, or it could be something, or just just talking to people about going through struggles. I think as men we generally don't like to talk about stuff, right? We keep it up pent inside, and then you kind of just, there comes a point where you have to talk about it. But what was that like, going through like some of the best times of your career, and and having Darcy with you and talking about all that and the friendship, and then you get this like, well, my wife's got cancer, right? Like it puts everything in perspective, doesn't it? It
does.
Tell me about that stuff.
Yeah, thank you for letting me talk about it. It's hopefully I don't choke up too much, but yeah, so I had a decade, I would say a pretty just fun decade that kind of culminated in 2011, 2012, running, Sam, going over to Europe. While I was in Europe, Darcy, my wife, was in New Zealand, with a friend over there that had just had a baby. And so we go from kind of being world travelers and free. And then we had a daughter in 2011, and then a second daughter was on the way in 2013. And we found out about 12 weeks into that pregnancy that Darcy had breast cancer, and just earth-shattering for us. What do we do? We have a baby that's,
right.
How do we start to treat this? It just completely turned our world upside down, and she ended up, having a mastectomy while she was pregnant, about 20 weeks pregnant, which is difficult to say the least, and underwent some chemotherapy while she was pregnant, and then delivered Tallulah. Darcy was completely bald when she had the baby, and so the baby had more hair than she did, and then followed up with more chemotherapy and more, and then some radiation, with 2 small children to take care of.
Yeah.
And so my priorities, there was no more like, hey, I'm going to run, the first priority. That became about the 50th priority, and maybe I get to it. And it certainly changed it from something that I just felt compelled to do to something that now became an avenue for me to just just live and breathe. It was really an escape for me at that point. So I just enjoyed it, just for that. But to say some about Darcy, anything that I've done in this life or this career, to me, pales in comparison to the kind of person that she was. I mean, she was just an amazing person, and so she ended up battling cancer. It came back in her bones in 2017, and then in her brain in 2018, and then she finally passed in February of 2020. And so there were about 7 years altogether there of fighting cancer and raising kids and going through life's trials, and actually started TapTapEat during that time.
It's good that you get to see that and be around that and hear those initial talks and the launch and everything.
And she was our biggest advocate. I mean, she believed in it. She almost wouldn't let me not do it. I could have talked myself out of it at any point in time. It's like, okay, this is really a stupid idea. Like, but she almost wouldn't let me. And so she's really, I owe so much to her for what she brought. And I didn't mention this, I should have earlier. She was actually there in Belgium for the sub 4 minute mile.
Oh, amazing.
She couldn't stay away.
Yeah.
And she brought, this was the hard part for me, is like, she's like, I'm coming, and my mom wants to come, and your mom wants to come. And so think of the same bus of athletes that Sam was talking about. Like, it's literally filled with high caliber athletes, and on that bus is riding me and my wife and my mother and mother-in-law. So intersection of two worlds that I never ever foresaw coming. But that was all all Darcy and her passion for being there, for being.
Well, and also, like, I mean, there sadly there are some husbands, wives, even that just like that graduate. They were in college, they graduate college, they did this sport, and now it's like, they don't have anything left, right? Or they get married and that's it. There's no more sport. But to have someone like Darcy to support you and say, no, you can do this, go for it.
Yeah.
That's special.
She loved to surprise,
especially halfway around the world too, right?
Yes.
If you're like, hey, I'm going to travel, I'm going to play around the state, by all means, make sure you're home by bedtime. by the end of the day. But if it's like, oh, can I go to Europe? Like those conversations and being so supportive, and then when she says, Mum's coming, and your mother too, that's awesome.
The whole kind of bachelor life in the apartments they were living at, they didn't take to that too well, but I mean, it was pretty comical. But Darcy too. I mean, I mentioned the indoor nationals race in Boston. She showed up. Like, I was at the meet almost ready to warm up and then walk. I had no clue she was going to be there.
That's brilliant.
And she just shows up, and she was just that kind of person that she couldn't stay away, for one, and then two, she loved to surprise people like that.
And now that you get to live every day honoring her with the business, raising your kids, like, there's not many things that motivate you more, right, than that, like that memory and kind of continuing her legacy and just living life for her, right, and for the kids and everything.
It certainly plays a big part. I'm still I would say in the active grieving process.
Sure.
I mean, it's been 18 months now, which is hard to even say, and each month has its own challenges. But certainly her memory, for one thing, those kids, they get me out of bed.
As much as you don't want them to.
Well, I don't think I would if they weren't there many days, know. But if she were here, she would make sure that I made everybody who's listening, if you're still listening, aware that Darcy actually completed 2 marathons, which is something I've never done. So in some ways, she was more of a runner than I was, But no, it's the memory and the fight and the drive and just the zest, the love for life that she had is something that I feel like I'll always try to honor that.
Thanks for sharing that. I know it's not easy, and it's soon. Still, like I said, 18 months is a lot, and like I said, every month is different. But thankfully, you've got a good group of friends to run with, Sam here and everyone else, and still, the Ashley and the community at Oklahoma Christian, which I've had many stories on the podcast, not to do with running, but just Oklahoma Christian in general, SNU, then Oklahoma, right? Just the support system that we have here, and the reason that we're all still living here, or we move back here, or whatever it is. Like it's a special place to be, and you know, there's someone who will come help out at any second if you just make a phone call or whatever. But thanks for coming down again for part 2 to talk about this, because I'm glad we did it, because there's a lot of good stories in that.
You may have to cut some out. If you get us talking about running,
it's
we don't get to do that very much.
Exactly.
These days,
but at least you'll have this content for whoever wants to listen to it. You can say, someone asks you about your running, you're like, hey, I did a podcast, you can go listen to it. But yeah, thanks so much for that. For people listening, I'll post the link to some of the guys' races, and you can see the numbers and people who they've raced against and beat as well. Chris, if you're listening, there's a link to the one where Sam beat you. And yeah, thanks for guys for coming down. We'll catch you next episode. Cheers.
Hope you guys enjoyed that great episode. Thank you so much for listening. As always, huge shout out to our sponsors, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, sharing Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at OklahomaHOF. Our other sponsor, the Chickasaw Nation, amazing sponsor. They do amazing things for the state, and they're always sponsoring something in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and without their support, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.